everybody. It's damn good to have you here on The Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink. Going to be keeping us on top of our games this morning. Julian Edlow, Steve Buchanan. I am Emerson Latzia. Coming up, tons of college football bets to break down as Week 1 is underway. We have the main meat on the bone of Week 1 college football coming at us today. We're diving deep into a historically close AL West playoff race. Plus, we're going to head out to Gillette Stadium, get an entire season preview of the AFC. The NFC's coming tomorrow. Talking to Jeff Howe of The Athletic and Tom E. Curran of NBC Sports Boston. But first things first, Fast Twitch Energy Drink in the house with us. The perfect time to tackle our NFL hangover segment, overreacting to a lot of the latest storylines and news around the league, including something Sean McVay, head coach of the Rams, had to say this week, gentlemen.
Yeah, he got a little muscle strain, so we're kind of taking it day by day with him.
Is it still the hamstring?
It is.
Okay. So would you call it a setback, or?
I would probably call it a setback. Yeah.
So we're talking about Cooper Kupp here, guys. Overreaction, yay or nay? Rams are already toast for the season right now with this dude banged up. Steve.
Yeah, I mean, this doesn't sound like a huge setback here. I mean, this is different from the hamstring strain that he suffered earlier in the training camp. But if he is out of that lineup, like, it just leaves a massive void on offense that cannot be filled. Like, if you're talking about your wide receiver one would end up being Van Jefferson. I mean, last year he averaged 4.5 targets per game, 42 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's without Cooper Kupp on the field. But, you know, he and Jefferson and Stafford have been working together a lot during the offseason. I guess they hooked up together. They were practicing a lot, a significant amount. So, you know, obviously that rapport is going to be there. But you cannot duplicate what Cooper Kupp can do on the field. And for a team that is likely to struggle all throughout the year to begin with, take out your alpha at the wide receiver one, you're talking about some major problems here.
All right, Jules, they don't have a ton of talent. They have some A-team talent for sure. Coop, one of them. How much trouble are the Rams in if Cooper Kupp misses extended amount of time?
Big trouble, but I had the Rams in big trouble, you know, prior to this, because this seemed like a likely range of outcomes that guys like a Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, some of the top-end talent on a team that's not very deep, would land in this situation. So if Cooper Kupp's not out there, obviously the Rams' offense is in a much worse spot. But, this team is not deep beyond guys like Stafford, a 35-year-old quarterback, beyond a guy like Cooper Kupp, who caught lightning in a bottle and had almost a 2,000-yard season, but hasn't done much since. So if injuries are going to be worked in, and they have for parts of the careers of a lot of their best players, I think the outlook for this Rams team is pretty poor. So I already had them, really struggling this season. Stafford's a guy that I played an under on his passing yards, and that's looking a little bit better, I guess, if a guy like Cooper Kupp isn't ready for Week 1.
Outlook doesn't look too great in Indianapolis either, with Jonathan Taylor now being put on the PUP list, so he's going to miss at least the first 4 games. Packers reportedly made this offer. They were going to be willing to make him one of the highest paid running backs in the league. Give me a reasonable offer here, Steve, for Taylor.
I mean, let's put it this way. What the Colts were asking for was insane, and it made it feel like they were disingenuous about them actually wanting to move him.
And this is coming from an owner who has been very vocal about, the running backs really aren't what they used to be anymore.
And that's true. And that's why, if you look at, what the market contract for a premier running back is right now, you're looking at about the $13 million range. And for somebody that's already on the PUP list with an ankle injury, he's got a back injury, why would you want to hand out that type of contract to somebody like him? But they were asking from the Dolphins for Jalen Waddle and more on top of that. The draft capital that the Dolphins used on Waddle to begin with isn't even close to what, the Colts supposedly wanted to pay someone, with that market contract. So, at this point, it's what would have been a reasonable ask? I guess a second-round pick at this point would have been reasonable, but asking for Waddle and more just really made it feel like they had no intention of moving him at any point, because there is no team that would have accepted that trade for somebody who's coming into the year banged up to begin with on a bum contract.
Jules, this is going to result in complete disaster for Anthony Richardson. Yay or nay? I believe that he's a guy you mentioned last week about betting to lead the league in interceptions.
Yeah, 18-1 when we talked about it last week, and I don't mind that. Jonathan Taylor would help this Colts offense, certainly.
Yeah.
But having a running back in there isn't going to do everything for Anthony Richardson. He needs an offensive line, he needs receivers, and he doesn't have, I don't want to say capable. He doesn't have a good enough skill position players around him and protection necessarily to thrive as a rookie. I think he's a raw talent that had that 1 year at Florida. He needs more reps under his belt. I would go more of a Jordan Love route with him and try and teach him the game before throwing him in there, but they're going to do so, which is why I think he's going to make mistakes given the players that he's going to be sharing the field with. So the Taylor impact, not as huge on Richardson and the Colts. I don't think a running back necessarily moves a win total with Taylor being out or anything like that. It more so just affects the rest of the market of a team that could a good team that could benefit from having Taylor. But the Colts are playing this both ways, saying, no, you're not worth paying, but you are worth a first-round pick, which does not make sense.
And at least as of right now, without Taylor, those first 4 games, we're talking home game against the Jags, then you go to the Texans, then you go to the Ravens, and then you host the Rams, which right now, 2 guys who appeared to be in position to lead the Colts backfield is going to be Deion Jackson, Evan Hull, because Zach Moss, he may factor in down the road, but right now he's dealing with a broken arm. Like, this team just appears to be in absolute trouble right now, a mess.
Yeah, the backfield's a mess, and we don't necessarily care about that from a player prop betting angle or a DFS angle. We want to get those guys, those lesser names that the casual fan may not know about as much. The problem is that's good when, in a good offense like the Saints have an Alvin Kamara that is missing for the first 3 games, and you can look at the backs behind him. But when we're not sure if this offense is going to be moving too much, like Richardson should be the Colts' leading rusher with his natural ability to get out and escape. When plays fall apart, he'll get out and run and have some big gains. I don't know if these other guys in the Colts backfield are going to be able to do much, especially if they're sharing time early in the season. So I'm just kind of passing on the whole situation, whereas normally we like to see a situation like this early in the season and try and take advantage of something.
Nothing even in the land of fantasy, Steve, here that could pull in your interest a little bit with these guys.
I mean, to be fair, we did see Jackson a decent amount last year. I mean, Taylor was hurt on a couple times last year, but he wasn't efficient on the ground. He was only averaging about 3.5 yards per carry and 2.3 yards after contact. Where he was efficient was through the air. He was averaging 7 yards per reception last year, so he can catch out of the backfield. Like Evan Hull, 5th-round draft pick out of Northwestern. We don't really know what we're going to get out of him, but kind of like what Julian said, like they should be relying upon Richardson to do a lot of the run game for them. I mean, when was the last time the Colts had a mobile quarterback to begin with? It's something that's been non-existent in that offense for years, it feels like at this point. So I guess Jackson does have some appeal because especially like on a DraftKings format where full PPR scoring, catching out of the backfield will give those points there, but man, it really is an absolute mess in that backfield for the Colts.
Well, Steve, how appealing does like Michael Thomas look right now in New Orleans? He's a guy who's been very vocal about how difficult it's been to come back from this injury he's been dealing with. We know it's this division of mediocrity, but we also know that the Saints have the only proven quarterback under center in that division with Derek Carr. Are you concerned about Michael Thomas?
I mean, how can you not be? I mean, this is somebody who hasn't been healthy since 2019. Over the past 3 years, we're talking about 56 catches for 609 yards and 3 touchdowns total. That is what these Saints have gotten out of him for the past 3 years. But when he has been healthy, and that's been the first 4 years that he was in the league, this is someone who is a lock for over 1,000 receiving yards when he's fully healthy. The only thing that does concern me with Derek Carr being in the mix now, this is something that is going to bode well with Chris Olave. Derek Carr made the 4th most pass attempts of 20 yards or more last year when he was with the Raiders. Olave had 27 targets of 20 yards or more last year. So they're going to be doing a lot of deep shots in that offense, and that's going to benefit Chris Olave. So while Michael Thomas is going to be, potentially in the mix here a lot, maybe he's not that wide receiver one we've known for him before when he was getting over 1,000 receiving yards. That is more Chris Olave. But if Thomas is healthy, obviously he has incredible hands. He can do a lot of things here. But again, we need to prove it and see that on the field because that is not something we have seen for such a long, long time now.
Jules, Thomas will fail to regain that wide receiver one status because of this injury. Is that an overreaction or no?
No, not at all. I don't think anybody expects him to be a wide receiver 1 anymore because, like Steve said, it's been so long since we saw that. Just getting him in the mix as a contributor would be huge for this team. You don't draft Chris Olave with a pick that high unless he's going to be your guy now. And Derek Carr is the quarterback, the premier quarterback in this division. I'm not even a huge Carr guy, but he should build a good relationship there with Olave, like he had with Devontae Adams that last year in Las Vegas. So I think that there are plenty of other pass catchers, particularly when Kamara is back in the mix, that will be above Michael Thomas in the pecking order. So just getting him in as a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 that can contribute to a team that should be able to win 9 games or so and win this division would be huge for the Saints. Having Michael Thomas on the field late in the season would be huge for the Saints, and just having him not be re-injured.
All right, well, a lot of questions right now as the NFL season is closing in. Bettors out there, I need a little bit of help. We got you covered because hot off the press is an updated NFL betting guide from VSiN. If you already subscribed, make sure you dive back into it because it is fresh, brand new, updated rosters. Coming up after the break, what the American League West, including Julio Rodriguez and the Mariners just did that we have not seen in more than 4 freaking decades. All right, back here on the Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink. I am Emerson Latzia, sitting alongside our beefy baseball guru, Steve Buchanan. So we're in the final month of the Major League Baseball regular season. The calendar has flipped to September. And Steve, what a nightmare August it was for the Angels, who are more worried about the luxury tax than the playoff race right now. They succeeded with their salary dump here, dude.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you tell me at what cost?
I mean, there is no proper family-friendly way to describe how this Angels team has been in the second half. They just went 8-19 in the month of August.
Brutal,
They averaged 3.8 runs per game and allowed 6.6 per game in that month. So they just basically said, we're going nowhere. Big shock. Everyone saw that coming. And they dropped essentially every guy that they acquired in the trade deadline.
Right?
So Lucas Giolito, Matt Moore, Ronaldo Lopez all went to the Guardians. They're only going to have to pay $2.1 million in total salary for all three of those guys. Hunter Renfroe goes to the Reds. Dominic Leone goes to the Mariners. Nobody wanted Randall Grichuk for whatever reason.
I was going to say, this poor guy is like, nobody wants me.
My God, like your punishment is to be banished to the Angels for the rest of the season. But that does have them fall under the luxury tax. So now, out of everything that they could have gotten for Shohei Ohtani, now they're going to get a comp pick, essentially in the second round. That is what they're going to get for Ohtani when they could have had one of the biggest massive trade hauls in MLB history if they had traded him. Although, his UCL injury probably did bring that down a little bit. But just what you could have had instead of trying to go for a playoff spot when that was never going to happen. This will go down as one of the biggest blunders, in my opinion, in franchise history for the Angels and maybe in Major League Baseball.
And Steve, I've seen people like on Twitter talk about, man, you got to do something now with Mike Trout. And I'm thinking, if the owner wasn't going to trade Shohei Ohtani, what the hell makes you think that he will eventually move Mike Trout and try to get a haul in return there? I mean, he would have just, as you've already mentioned, received and pulled in a historic call for Shohei Ohtani.
And to be fair, too, while Trout is a generational talent, he can't stay on the field. He has constantly been injured, and that's going to be a concern for a team, too. And, when we talk about getting up there in age, because baseball, it's like when you're 30, you're old, but he's kind of getting up there too as well. So it's like, I feel like the time has passed to get a massive haul for Trout. It would still bring a big haul, don't get me wrong. But I think with the injury concerns and everything, that definitely is something that teams would be a little bit wary of.
Yeah, his body is 100% failing him right now. Hey, of the new guys, though, who are in new homes that the Angels put on waivers here, which one do you think can help his team the most coming down the stretch? Feels like the Guardians here were playing more defense than offense.
No, they absolutely were. Because, at this point, they're in no position to get a wild card spot. They're 10.5 games out of the wild card. You're not going to make up that ground in just a month's time. They are 5 games out of the division, so maybe they can catch the Twins. But you're 100% right. Like, they were playing defense there. They were trying to keep guys away from the Twins because, quite frankly, the Twins were right there in the pecking order of who was going to be able to get these guys off the waivers. Have the Guardians not gone and claimed these guys. But I do like Hunter Renfroe a lot going to the Reds. I think that's a nice bat for them. Can help with the platoon advantage because their pitching is so bad that if the Reds make the playoffs, they're just going to have to score a ton of runs to stay in those playoff games.
The race for the division, some say it's heating up. Really, in fact, it's on fire right now. How about this? The top 3 teams in the AL West are all separated by a game or fewer. This is just the 3rd time since the division began in 1969 that 3 teams in the same division were within a game or fewer of the lead entering September. So, Astros, Rangers, Mariners here, right? Mariners hold the tiebreaker at the moment. Not exactly an easy road for them, though, dude. Look at this. Like, the remaining opponents have the highest winning percentage of the 3. 524. Of their 28 games left right now, 4 against the Rays, 3 against the Dodgers, 3 versus the Astros, 7 against the Rangers. Those are key here for Seattle. So, odds to win the division, plus 200. How do we feel about this? I know you are a big Mariners fan.
Right. So, I am a little biased here. I do have them 6-1 to win the division, so I would really appreciate if they won the division. But what the Mariners have, what other teams don't have right now, is they have an elite pitching rotation. Like, you look at that pitching rotation 1 through 5, it's hard to poke holes in that rotation, and that has been really their crutch all season long. They have been a pretty mid offense the entire year until they got into the month of August when they really kind of caught fire, and that kind of coincided with Julio Rodriguez catching fire, and that almost had a trickle down effect on the rest of the offense. This offense is going to worry me in the playoffs because they can go absolutely ice cold, and we've seen this a number of times. I mean, there was a point in time during the month of August where we weren't seeing a guy hitting higher than 254 on the team. That's not saying that batting average is everything, but that just kind of goes back to show you how this team's lack of hitting really can come into play here. But their pitching rotation, their bullpen has been their strong point. I think that's what's going to eventually carry them into the division title. But when it's all said and done, biased aside, I really do believe that they're going to win the division here.
All right, so those 3 against the Astros and 7 against the Rangers, they're key because they're 8-2 against Houston this season, right? But they're 1-5 against the Rangers. Maybe this schedule also is something that is really going to be the difference for when you look at the Astros here, which, by the way, all 3 of these teams we're talking about in the AL West, they all lost last night.
Right, of course.
So the D-backs and the Orioles are really the only 2 teams in contention, like aside from their West rivals, still on the Astros schedule. 6 games left with the Royals, who put a beat down on the Sox last night.
Yep.
Is that going to be the difference here? Minus 110 to win the division.
Well, the funny thing is, too, is that the entire AL West is actually played poor against teams that are above 500. The Astros are actually the worst of the bunch. They're only 35-38 against teams
up on each
over
other?
500. I guess so. The Mariners are 32-33 against teams over 500, and the Rangers 32-34. What's key for the Astros right now is they have 8 combined games, like you mentioned, against the Royals and Oakland over a 2-week span. They have to come out of that with like a 6-2 record or something like that to kind of really remain in contention. And they have to take advantage of those games, whereas like the Mariners have a pretty tough schedule to come up. The Rangers have a pretty tough go of it in September. So that is going to be where the Astros, if they're going to take this title, need to capitalize on. But like I mentioned, teams above 500, they have given the Astros a lot of trouble this year. So that's definitely something to watch as this month starts to wind down.
Okay, and then what are your thoughts here on the Rangers and where they fit into the mix?
Yeah, I mean, the Rangers have gone cold at the worst possible time. Like you see there on the graphic, they're 3-7 over their last 10 games. They're just not doing well right now. They're not pitching well. They're not hitting well right now either. And they have a pretty tough go of it in the month of September. They have the Twins that are coming up right now. After that, they're going to see the Astros, the Blue Jays. They got the A's in there, so that should be a couple of good wins there. But they just don't have a favorable schedule during the month of September. And I don't think it's a coincidence that since Josh Jung went down with a fractured thumb back on August 7th, this team has really struggled. They've gone 9-12 since he's gone down with that injury. He was I shouldn't say underrated, but he was such a big part of that offense in the heart of the lineup that now they have to shift some of these guys around. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this offense has really struggled since he's gone down. So we don't even know when we're going to get him back. He might not even be back for the playoffs if they even make it at this point, which kind of is crazy when you think about how much they've dominated that division for the entire season. So as of right now, it looks a little murky for the Rangers. And again, if you look at that schedule, they probably have the worst of it amongst those 3 teams. And with the way that they're playing right now, it might be a little too late for them to actually catch up when you look at the rest of that schedule remaining and what the other teams can do.
Well, in terms of tonight, how about Jason Dominguez of the Yankees, who are playing the Astros, right? He homers last night, his first MLB at bat with New York, and off of Justin Verlander.
Right.
Talking DFS tonight, is this now the time you got to get him in while he's still cheap?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be very cheap. I mean, these guys that get called up here, they're obviously extremely cheap, and you're getting them at the stone minimum. Someone like Jason Dominguez was someone who was a huge, highly touted prospect in that Yankee system. They have really nothing to play for right now, so they're just going for those younger guys. But I'm actually going to go with somebody on the Rangers, even though I was talking kind of bad about them.
No, it's all good.
Simeon going against Dallas Keuchel tonight of the Twins. Against lefties, Simeon has a 345 WOBA with a 118 WRC plus on the year against lefties. Simeon is also very strong against sinkers, and that's what Keuchel, his main pitch, has been. Simeon has a 382 WOBA against that pitch there on the season. Dallas Keuchel, we don't really know what we're getting out of him right now. Only 18 innings pitched on the year. 3.50 ERA, but his expected ERA is over 2 runs higher at 5.51. So I think it's easy to say that he's been a bit lucky when he's been taking the mound. This is a good chance for the Rangers to get another win back in that column when they need it so badly.
All right, let's wrap up on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Just give me your best bet on the board tonight.
Yeah, I like Yordan Alvarez to go over 1.5 bases tonight at -110, going up against Luis Severino of the Yankees. Has a 424 WOBA with 10 of the 20 home runs that he's allowed against lefties on the year. Severino had 2 straight starts where he pitched really well, but it's against the Tigers and the Nationals. So have you really been pitching well if you're facing those type of offenses there? You got Alvarez, who's gone over 1.5 bases in 41 of the 88 games that he's played on the year. That's good for 46% of the season. I think he and the Astros get it done tonight against Severino, over 1.5 bases.
All right, you young men have done a tremendous job. Take a break. We're going to preview the entire AFC with Jeff Howe and Tommy Curran coming up. But first, we're bringing back Julian Edlow. He's taking us on a trip around college football. Which favorites he's backing today? Some massive spreads on the board. We'll tackle the Week 1 slate when the Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink, returns.
Yeah, he got a little.
Welcome back to The Sweat, everybody. Powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink. College football week 0, the appetizer to today, the main week 1 slate. Julian Edlow back. I am Emerson Latzia. What do you think the odds are of the ACC changing its name to the All Coast Conference?
That would work.
It really would work because Cal, Stanford, and SMU officially being added. They will join the ACC next season. That was the big news of the week. Last week, we talked some ACC. You really like Clemson here. Give me another, and people watching at home, another conference future that you were looking at before these games kick off today.
Yeah, so
as well.
I put out a handful of them on Twitter actually yesterday, just leading up to the season. Some last minute futures that were on my mind, and I wound up going with them. One of them actually is a team that we've seen. I spoke down on Notre Dame last weekend. They come out and blow out Navy, but that win total goes from 8.5 to 9 based on winning a game as a 3-touchdown favorite in Ireland. That should not budge the win total. Notre Dame was like minus 1,500 to win that game. If that moves the win total, that is a miscalculation in the market if bettors now think that Notre Dame has improved based on that. So under 9 wins flat on Notre Dame, they still have to play Ohio State, Clemson, and USC. I think the ceiling on Notre Dame is 9 wins. So I think you're gonna push or win that. This is gonna be an 8 or 9 win Notre Dame team. So that's one that a future that has kind of developed based on last week's results. And then another one, this is a team that we'll talk about. South Carolina, one of the harder schedules in the nation, but they dropped from 6.5 to 6 on the win total based on all the unders being bet. Again, this is one, I don't think this team's going to go 5-7 and miss a bowl team. I think this is a 6 or 7 win team. You push or win this. And obviously the big Saturday night game is UNC and South Carolina. If the Gamecocks can get that win, you're off to a great start here. But I like these two win total bets right now that have moved at flat numbers.
I mean, UNC, South Carolina may be the best matchup of the day. Drake May, Spencer Rattler here in a quarterback matchup that NFL scouts definitely have their eyes on here. I know in your best bets article this week, you liked South Carolina +3.
Yeah, and I think they're going to win the game. So I think it's 2.5 now. I'll take them at the 2.5. This spread has moved a lot. It's floated around between a field goal and a pick 'em all summer. So a lot of movement. I think these are two relatively even teams, but I give the slight edge to the Gamecocks out of the SEC. I think this is one that if you got the over early, that's probably a good bet. I'm not going to give it out now, but 2 weak defenses, 2 very good quarterbacks, and 2 good offenses. It has come down from 64 to 63.5 there. You see the total. But ultimately, I think that South Carolina's defense, having a full year of tape on Drake May losing some of his top weapons and having his best wide receiver not eligible for this game, I think that the South Carolina defense will be able to get a couple more stops than the UNC defense, which has a lot of holes against Spencer Rattler and that SC offense, which South Carolina ended hot. They had big wins to take away college football playoff hopes over Tennessee, over Clemson, and then led and ultimately blew a bowl game against Notre Dame. I think they can carry some of that momentum versus a North Carolina team that came out of the gates hot last year, and then people kind of caught on to Drake May, and they spiraled down the stretch and got mopped by Clemson in that ACC title game.
Well, South Carolina has won 4 of the last 5 in that series. What about Colorado, TCU? Which way are you leaning? Bettors may decide to lean on Deion Sanders, given this high-profile debut here.
Yeah, I haven't bet this one, but this is a game that bettors want to talk about. They are excited to back Deion Sanders. They are all about Colorado this season, which was one of the worst. It was the worst Power 5 conference team last year and one of the worst Power 5 conference teams of all time. So they definitely transfer in a lot of talent with Deion Sanders, but we don't know if Deion Sanders can coach. He's had a massive talent edge in every game that he has ever coached. He's a great recruiter, and he recruited guys to Colorado. I'm sure he'll give a great pregame speech, but now he is playing a team that made it to the national title game, brings 10 starters back. He's going to be at a massive talent disadvantage. I don't know if he knows how to schematically coach. And we're in a spot where about 2/3 of the bets are on Colorado. Everybody's betting the Colorado win total over. People are really reaching on them to win the Pac-12, which has absolutely no chance. You look at the money line splits available on VSiN. 38% of the bets for 72% of the money. Everybody wants to take their money and put it on Colorado to win this game. That is ridiculous. I don't think they're winning this game. But 20.5 is a lot of points. Ultimately, I would fade the public on this one and lay it with TCU, who's probably better than people are giving them credit for. But it's a pass for me. It's a game that I think we're going to learn a lot from if you watch it.
20.5, same spread there for Penn State, West Virginia, which is interesting because West Virginia had just one loss by more than 20 points last season.
Yeah, this is an interesting game. Penn State is getting a lot of hype from bettors to go over 9.5 wins, which means if they did lose to Ohio State and Michigan, who are on the schedule, they would have to be perfect in their other 10 games. They're going to win this game against...
quarterback this year too, right, for Penn State?
Yep. Clifford in the NFL now, so I think that Penn State is getting a little bit too much love, especially considering the very talented division that they're in. It's going to be a really good team, but I think this is a lot of points early in the season. Again, another one that I haven't bet, but I would probably, particularly if this got to 21, which it may, leading up to kick, look more towards the West Virginia side. But again, this is a game that we're going to watch, learn from. A lot of bettors think that West Virginia is not going to be very good this season, and that Penn State is going to be elite and maybe better than Michigan and Ohio State. So good game to find out some answers to some of those questions.
All right, speaking of Ohio State, facing Indiana. Indiana has not beaten the Buckeyes since 1988, a 27-game losing streak.
Let's make it a 28-game losing streak. I don't think that's a hot take at all.
No.
But the spread moving from 28 to 30, a little interesting. Bettors are willing to lay over 4 touchdowns with an Ohio State team that just named a starting quarterback and has come out and said that they will probably use both quarterbacks until they kind of find something here. And it's at 30.5 now. So I'm going to bring up the splits on this game. Ohio State has 81% of the bets, so about 4 out of 5 bettors want to lay it, but not as it's only 68% of the money. So some sharper bets, you could say, 19% of the tickets for 32% of the handle, taking 30.5 points with Indiana. I would probably lean that way. I'm going to have to see it from Ohio State. I know they have Marvin Harrison. They have great receivers. Let's see if the quarterback can get them the ball. I'll take 30.5 at home with Indiana if I had to play this game and make Ohio State prove it to me.
And the Hoosiers have lost the last 7 meetings by an average of 29.8 points per game.
That number's right on the numbers.
Exactly, which means the line is, yes, right on point. How do you handle, though, we've talked about some of these massive spreads here on the board, especially for anyone maybe new watching right now. How do you handle these large spreads? It's just something that you just want to avoid and you want to focus more on like team totals or something?
Yeah, so they make me a little nervous, particularly in week 1. As the season goes on and we learn more about teams and you have an Alabama or Ohio State favored by 35 points, generally we know that they're good enough to put their foot on the gas and cover that number unless it's a look-ahead spot to another top 10 matchup the next week or something like that. But some of these, if I'm looking at the dog, like I said, with Indiana, maybe I would take Indiana with 30.5, then fine. I generally don't want to lay over 30 points, and I would look at a team total. So an example, Texas laying 35.5 at home to Rice. It should be right in that ballpark, but Texas team total is floating right around 47. I think Texas should get into the 50s in this game, even though they're going to Tuscaloosa to play Alabama next week. This is a game against Rice where they can kind of name their score, name their total. So I think Texas should get into the 50s. Rice opened up against USC in week 1 last year, gave up 66 in that game. So this defense should not be able to stop a Texas offense that is looking to break out, added some really nice pieces. I like a Texas team total. I think a Tennessee going against a really bad Virginia team, missing its best D lineman. That spread is around 28. That's when I would look to Tennessee over 41.5 points. So I think there is something to the team totals. And USC, that team total has crept up after their big game last week. Over 50. I don't know if I can touch a team total over 50, but I would think that they would get there against Nevada. Their defense can't get stops. That leads to them having to put up more points to contend.
Yeah, I've seen like Iowa, Utah State, and I know Iowa is always a candidate to play the under, right?
So Iowa is always a candidate to play the under. Interesting wrinkle, though. We'll see if the quarterback, McNamara, who transferred from Michigan, plays or not. Rumors he might be out week 1 and then play week 2. But the wrinkle here is that Iowa's coach has it in his contract that he needs to average over 25 points per game. So I think that's going to lead to some betting, some late game scores that would be considered running up the score that, you know, are worth money now. So literal money to the coaching staff. So if Iowa, you know, late in a game, even against a team that they're up 25 points against, that you know, wrinkle is about an average. So score a late touchdown, kick a late field goal, boost that average. I think we're going to see more points from Iowa this season. I am a little scared to play their under in games like this.
All right, Jules, good stuff, man. Coming up, it will be time to turn our attention back to Sundays. Which rookie quarterbacks passing yards props are way too high? Why are bettors all over Bijan Robinson? We'll talk to one who already considers the rookie a top 5 running back in the NFL. Just think, at this time next week, the NFL regular season will be underway. The Lions will be 1-0, having just knocked off the Chiefs on Thursday Night Football, and no one is more fired up for it than DraftKings contributors Pierce Dietrich and Jeff Ulrich here for a nice Saturday morning NFL higher-low session. So we will talk about these following odds and lines. You tell us and the people at home, are they too high or too low? And we will start under center here, gentlemen. 3 rookie quarterbacks expected to suit up and start next week. Anthony Richardson's passing yards prop sits at 2,800 and a half. C.J. Stroud up to 3,050 and a half. Bryce Young topping the rookie class, 3,200 and a half. So tempered expectations here for sure. Pierce Dietrich, which of these is just a little too high or a little too low to you?
I like all 3 of these guys, so I would say they're all too low. I know it's crazy to support young quarterbacks with offensive lines that may not be the greatest, although the Panthers' offensive line is probably the best of the 3. And then we've got receiving cores that there's a lot of question marks with new guys coming in, but maybe I'm just being a little too optimistic. Glass is half full, but Richardson has good receivers in Pittman and Pearson, Downs. Doesn't really have much of a rushing game, so it's going to be on his shoulders. I like Stroud's receivers. I know they probably don't jump off the page, but I think there's a lot there. And then you look at Carolina. We'll see what happens with Thielen. We'll see what happens with Miles Sanders. Mingo could be an excellent rookie wide receiver. There's a lot of question marks, but I think they can all go over their number.
Oh, wow. Jeff, are you that confident in all 3 of them? This is bizarre to have Pierce on this program so positive.
So weird. Like, the earlier we come on and now he's more positive. Bizarre situation. Look, I mean, one thing about these numbers, the lines that we have on the quarterbacks right now, like the passing lines, they've all come down, excluding Anthony Richardson. C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young, they opened up around 3,700. So these are way different numbers than we had on them at the start of after the draft. So something to keep in mind there. But no, I'm not as bullish as Pierce. I do like Anthony Richardson. I think that Anthony Richardson, people expect him to be kind of, like Justin Fields. That's not really the case. Anthony Richardson has an arm, and he likes to use that arm. And yeah, he might have a 40% completion percentage, but when every 6th throw goes for like 40 yards, it's not going to matter. I think he will go over 2,800. I think is too low for him. I think C.J. Stroud is potentially the best pure passer of the group. I have a little bit of concerns that he may, if he gets a bad game or 2, they may put in Davis Mills. So I'm not touching his number. The guy I don't like, though, is Bryce Young. The Panthers were absolutely terrible in preseason, and I have big concerns that their O-line is not going to be as good as it was last year. Some players there played terribly. When Adam Thielen is going into your year as your wide receiver 1, there are issues. I don't think that there's very much yards after the catch upside with this receiving group. I think Bryce Young is also in danger of being hurt if his O-line is bad. I mean, it's the guy who's barely 200 pounds. He's 5'10". He got nailed like 3 times in preseason. Bryce Young would be an under target for me.
All right, let's talk Bijan Robinson here. Again, rookie running back Jeff Ulrich, who weeks ago on this program you said is already a top 5 running back in the NFL. His rushing total, 1,100 and a half. Is that too high or too low for you? In terms of splits on the DK Sportsbook, how about going over this mark, plus 100 odds? 76% of the handle right now.
I mean, did I actually say that? It sounds like something I might have said. I mean, top 5 talent, absolutely. When we're talking about betting, though, 1,100 line, 1,100 and 0.5, I don't really have a strong take. It's just one I would just leave. I think there's better lines to attack for running backs. And look, no way am I going to take an over on a rookie running back in an Arthur Smith offense. I don't trust Arthur Smith enough. It's a guy who's given Kyle Pitts like 4 targets a game since he's come into the league. He's also got Tyler Algier to deal with as a back. But the upside with Bijan is there. Like I said, he is a top 5 talent in the league, and he's still in a run-first offense. So it's just not really a line I like. If you're looking for an under, I would rather attack a guy like Miles Sanders, who's got 925 as his line, and I don't think his O-line is very good. Or you want to take an over, go with Rachaad White, who's only at 700, a completely main carry back. I think Bijan's line is just one I would leave alone. I won't be shocked if it goes either way, to be honest, but I do think he's going to have a good season for fantasy, which is where I would be more bullish and trying to take more shares of Bijan Robinson.
All right, Pierce Dietrich, you think the 3 rookie quarterbacks can go over their passing yards prop. What about this rookie running back that everyone is so high on right now?
Jeff is a coward.
Yeah!
Jeff, he's been banging the drum for Bijan Robinson for months in the offseason, and here we are, a chance to take the over, and he doesn't do it. I get it. You don't want to take a rookie and an over total this early. A lot can go wrong, but this is your guy, Jeff. You said he was a generational talent coming out of the draft, so you got to stick with him. If Jeff's not going to do it, I'll do it. He's going to go over. I know there's a 3-headed monster if you throw in Patterson as well in Atlanta, and that is a little bit scary, but if any team can pull this off, any coach, it's going to be head coach Arthur Smith, who loves to run the ball, has a history of running the ball, and now he has nothing but great complementary running backs. I wouldn't be surprised to see them, and they don't really have much of a passing game. And on top of that, the NFC South is down a little bit, so a lot of it just comes down to, it seems to me, if he can just stay healthy. And I think he'll stay healthy and go way past this number.
I would much prefer just to see what Arthur Smith does in week 1 with the distribution. And then I can just bet his overs all gear. That's another way to go about it. But you're right, I am a coward.
Well, at least you admit it, Jeff. Seriously, you have definitely changed. You know who also loves to run the football? That'd be Justin Fields. The Bears season win total right now, Pierce Dietrich sits at 7.5. So, yes, there's DJ Moore there after the trade. But 8 wins from 3 last year? Come on, too high or too low?
If I'm chasing a Bears bet, it's probably going to be to win the division, where I can get a little bit more money out of this situation. I love Justin Fields in daily fantasy. I think I'll pile up the statistics, and game by game, he's going to have some great games. He's also going to have some stinkers. I know the Bears have improved on both sides of the ball. They've had a tremendous offseason. But ultimately, you've got to worry about this offensive line. You've got to worry about a rushing quarterback getting injured. I just can't trust that they're going to go over this. And if they do go over 7.5, I would rather just bet them to win a winnable division. So I'll take the division bets. I'm not going to go with it. I would go under if I had to make a play on the win-loss total for the Bears.
Jeff, what's the move here? Too high, too low, this win total for the Bears, set at 7.5 right now in the DK Sportsbook.
You know, it's certainly not a bad way to go about it, like bet them to win the division and then take them on the under. But I mean, I'm bullish enough on the Bears to say that I think I would just go over on the win total. One reason being is just I think the way their schedule is laid out, this is a team that may not have to be like that much better than they were last year to really push for this 8-win total. They have the Panthers at home. They have the Cardinals at home. Their division it's really not very good. You've got an incredibly young team with the Packers. I think Minnesota is ripe for all types of regression. I think Minnesota may finish last in this division. And, you know, Detroit is good, but I mean, like, this is their first time being a favorite. I mean, anything can happen with them. They addressed a lot of issues. Their run defense is good. They're going to be a tough team to play. And I think the addition of DJ Moore is really just going to give the offense another factor that they didn't have. They're going to be able to have more explosive plays, which really, really helps teams like in things like winning percentage. So, no, I'll take the over here. I actually like this one. I think the Bears are going to be a solid team this year, and I think they're going to be solid enough to push for that 8-win total again, just with the schedule that they have laid out. I think it's very much in their favor.
You cannot besmirch the good name of Pierce's Detroit Lions, which we will dive a lot deeper into the NFC North with you two tomorrow. Ravens are another interesting team here, guys. It's a hell of a division that they are in. Looked at as the strongest division in football. Their odds to win this division sit at plus 235. So is this too high or too low here, Pierce? We have less than 2 minutes to go in this block.
Too low for me. I would want a longer odds here because I just don't think the Ravens have much of a chance. The Bengals have improved. The Bengals' offensive line is much better. This is their division. The Browns are going to be a little bit better with Watson healthy. And the Steelers, by the end of the season, I imagine their quarterback play is going to improve. And the last thing I'll say is, how do we know this new offensive system is going to work for the Ravens? We've seen whiz kid OCs come out of college before and fail. I think it's too early to support the Ravens.
Is it too early to support the Ravens here, Jeff?
I'll take it a step further. Pierce and I are in complete lockstep. I think the Ravens should be, the Steelers and the Ravens should be flipped right now in the odds. Well, there's so much uncertainty here with the Ravens. They're starting Ronald Darby, who's coming off an ACL tear. He's 29 at cornerback. Marlon Humphreys is out for multiple games, potentially like half the year there. You've got Lamar Jackson, the first time in a passing offense in his career. How the heck is that going to work? Odell Beckham? Oh, yeah, he's not combustible at all. There's tons of elements. I don't like the Ravens at all. Again, I'd much rather back the Steelers.
All right, Pierce, looking forward to talking some NASCAR with you coming up in this show. I'm also looking forward to talking more about the Ravens with a couple dudes who also know football pretty well. Jeff Howe of The Athletic, Tommy Kern of NBC Sports Boston. On the road, we're going inside Gillette Stadium to preview the entire AFC coming up after this break. All right, everybody, welcome back to The Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy. Second hour is underway. I am Emerson Latzia. The NFL season creeping closer and closer now, less than a week away. And DraftKings, guess what? Has you covered with the hurry-up house party, baby, all week long. And by the way, Thursday night opener between the Chiefs and the Lions. Find our DraftKings setup in the parking lot of Arrowhead Stadium for 3 hours of pregame coverage, 4 to 7 Eastern time before the game. Gojo and Golick. Jesse's talking to Ross Tucker. Tons of guests. I'm sure barbecue will be there as well. You can catch it on DraftKings Network if you can't make it to the opener. And this past week, instead of flying to KC, I drove 25 minutes to Gillette Stadium to preview the entire NFL season. We'll start on the AFC side with guys like Jeff Howe of The Athletic and Tommy Curran of NBC Sports Boston. All right, here at Gillette Stadium, everybody, I got Jeff Howe of The Athletic. I got Tom E. Curran of NBC Sports Boston. Nobody knows football better than these two meatheads right here. And I want to start AFC East, guys, because it's the bread and butter for both of you. Aaron Rodgers, now a member, now inside this division, under center with the Jets. Tom, how does this change the balance of power inside the division?
It really makes, I think, guys, everyone more cognizant of the Jets than they have been. You know, you look at Sauce Gardner, you look at all the changes they made offensively, and they just didn't have anything in terms of an answer offensively because of their offensive line, because of Zach Wilson. Now they have what should be a turbocharged quarterback. Can Aaron Rodgers do what Tom Brady did, what Peyton Manning did to the Bucs and to the Broncos, respectively? I think the Jets were such a mess offensively last year that with 28 offensive touchdowns scored, people are expecting them to be one of the most prolific offenses in the league. Jeff, I think that's kind of an oversell.
He has reinvigorated that roster and the locker room. There's a lot of young guys in that team and a lot of young talent. They've drafted as well as any team in the league over the last 2 years, maybe even the last 3 years. So they just needed somebody to stabilize what they've kind of been doing. And he's been, from what I understand, a really good teacher. And it sounds like a different sort of Aaron Rodgers than the one that the Packers had in the last couple of years, because he has brought in guys and said, I've been able to win. You guys haven't gotten there yet. Let me show you how to do it. And he's good at conveying a message without yelling at somebody and making sure that, you know, they feel bad about themselves every time they walk away. And I think that's done a lot for that locker room. There are still some questions in the offensive line, whether an all-star caliber cast like that can really come together and win. As somebody told me this offseason, I've seen this movie before. So I think what it does for the division, though, is it makes it a lot more difficult for somebody like Buffalo to skate through.
Okay, I was just going to say, is it Super Bowl or bust for the Bills this year?
I think it has been for 2 years. I mean, this is a team that is absolutely good enough. They have the quarterback in place. They've gotten far enough to a point in the playoffs where you could say, all right, this team could absolutely win it. The big concern is they still don't really have a running game beyond Josh Allen. And when you're a team in the North that doesn't run the ball, then it's really hard for you to win those games in January.
Okay, so how difficult is this division going to be to play keep up if you're the Patriots, Tom?
Very difficult, because it's not just the interior inside the division games, it's everywhere else that they have to deal with teams like, you know, the Philadelphia Eagles, the New York Giants, who were resurging last year, the Cowboys. So there's so many good teams that the East is playing that it's going to be hard for the Patriots to catch their breath. I think that the Patriots are a much better team just by dint of adding Bill O'Brien. I mean, team won 8 games with negative coaching influence on the offense.
For sure.
Shouldn't O'Brien coming in be worth 2 wins? But then you say, well, but the schedule might be worth 3 losses. So is it a wash? But to me, the Patriots have such disarray on their offensive line and a little bit of an overrated defense relative to what they did last year, that I think they could be in closer to treading water than making gains mode.
I mean, you could make an argument in the AFC North that like all 4 teams capable of making the postseason here. Who do you have coming out on top in the AFC North? Let's go. You have something to say about the Browns?
Talk me off the ledge, but I think that people forget how recently Deshaun Watson was one of the most entertaining, scintillating, transcendent players in the NFL with his dual threat ability. It has been a while for a variety of reasons, but he's 27 years old. And I think that Deshaun Watson is going to put that team on his back a little bit. I love that division, Jeff, because of so many different styles and talents, but you also have, you know, it's an original 6 type division.
Yeah, and they guys in that division think that they have the best division in football. And one thing that they pointed out to me is because they all went 1-1 against each other last year, which shows the parity that everybody sort of knew that they had. I'm all in on the Bengals. I think this is the Bengals' year. Burrow to win MVP, the Bengals to win the Super Bowl. I really like what they've got. They've got a young defense with a lot of speed. So I think it's the Bengals' division. But what can Todd Monken do for the Ravens offense? I think that's the big unknown. And teams in that division are really wondering what that offense is going to look like. It's a new style, and Monken called an unbelievable college football playoff. And then the Steelers are a team that probably is getting overlooked, but
it may be a boring offense, but they're never going to be terrible under Tomlin.
I think
they just find a way.
They're just standard fare every year. You understand what you're going to get. You're never going to get a 4-win season, but you're probably not going to get a 13-win season either. So everyone's like, well, we'll see what they look like in November. I wonder, is Zay Flowers the best toy that Lamar Jackson has had?
He's so
I
young.
I don't want you to go so historically, but I mean, to me, he could be a player that really is the jetpack to that offense.
I don't know if I'm willing to go that far with a rookie. I think
slow your roll over there, Kern.
And there's been
Trying to be enthusiastic.
There's been some talent. I don't know. I'm willing to anoint a rookie in that offense.
He's the jetpack.
All right, so that's looked at as arguably the best conference in football, or best division in football, rather. AFC South looks like it could be the worst division in football this season. We know the Jaguars, America's team, the cream of the crop there. This could be a division, though, depending on what happens with Will Levis. You have 3 rookie quarterbacks, like, starting at one point. Which one is better set up for success, Jeff? You think it's C.J. Stroud there with the Texans, or do you think it's Anthony Richardson with the Colts?
That's a hard one to answer just because neither team is really set up for success. I mean, it's just in the immediate, in 2023, I just don't see it happening.
Okay.
I mean, this is the Jaguars division. The Titans are probably going to be slightly better than people think, but is it going to be enough to catch the Jaguars? I don't know. And then you've got 2 teams that are on the upswing, but it's going to take a while. I mean, the Texans are a team that they might win 5 or 6 games, but a lot of people who are on their schedule think, hey, they're going to be a really hard team to play against, not dissimilar to the Lions from a couple of years ago. Wins won't really be there, but you got a chance to. It's going to be a tough team to play against with DeMeco Ryans. In terms of which quarterback, I mean, I think C.J. Stroud in that system is going to be good for him. I think Anthony Richardson is going to be able to make more plays as a rookie.
Tom's obsessed with him. Tom loves how he just looks like he's been chiseled out of granite, this athletic freak.
Yeah, it's really, to me, it's going to be a Justin Fields 2.0 type season. I mean, you're going to have more occasions when you're watching Red Zone or the highlights at the end of the day, and you see, oh my God, that's an unreal play. Yeah, but he went 13 for 39 for 86 yards. Yeah, but that play was unbelievable. So I think that Anthony Richardson is going to be on kind of maybe a similar arc to what Justin Fields was on. He's going to have some bad games. He's going to have some tough days. But I love how his attitude, his upbeatness, and the way the team seems to be gravitating towards his personality, too.
Yeah, I think he's actually more closer in line to Josh Allen.
Okay.
And the first couple of years of Josh Allen's career where he would make some great plays. But I mean, remember how many times were we here in Foxborough, especially on a windy day, when Josh Allen would make like 3 great plays in a row, and then he'd throw a ball that would go over the mascot's head on the sideline. I think you're going to see plays like that from Anthony Richardson, where he's just going to absolutely wow and dazzle everybody. But there's going to be a check down that he sails 4 feet over somebody's head because he's still working on the mechanics and the fundamentals to get that accuracy in check. I saw them on, I think, August 1st when he had a really, really good practice. I mean, people have knocked the accuracy in the Colts. Certainly, I just pointed out the fact that he needs to improve his accuracy. The Colts know that too. But I mean, this is a guy who can deliver a really crisp ball, intermediate and deep down the field, hit guys in strides on crossing patterns so they could make plays after the catch. I mean, he's a kid who, once he figures it all out, he's only 21, unbelievable leader. All the qualities you want off the field. When he figures it out on the field, he's got a potential to be dangerous.
I got Trevor Lawrence as a dark horse MVP candidate in that division. We know Patrick Mahomes is more than capable of winning most valuable player in the NFL. What could prevent the Chiefs from winning their 8th straight AFC West title?
Nothing. I mean, I just don't think that something is missing for some reason with the Los Angeles Chargers. They just seem to have a glass ceiling that they are annually bumping up against. I think that
Vegas shoot themselves in the foot. quite a bit.
Well, we saw that. They riddled their feet with bullet holes.
Yep.
I think Denver's going to be a lot better than people expect. I really like the cultural fit that Sean Payton's, taking in and putting on those guys, the expectations. But I just think Kansas City's too good, Phil.
Could be complacency. A couple of years ago, one major issue that they had, and you saw it come to a head in that AFC Championship loss to the Bengals. They were up 21-3, and then Patrick Mahomes just kept forcing the ball down the field. Whereas if he took that short horizontal stuff, they win that game by 3 touchdowns, and it's not even close. I mean, does Patrick Mahomes get to that point again? I mean, he was outstanding at getting away from that stuff last year, so I think that's huge for them. But I think I'm going to counterpoint you on the Chargers. If there's one major reason, it's going to be the Chargers.
Okay.
And they've got Kellen Moore in there. Yep. They love Kellen Moore, and not only what he's able to do with Justin Herbert, but put those skill guys in a position to make plays. And that was a big draw that Brandon Staley had for him, seeing what Moore did with the Cowboys skill players. And they know each other. There's a familiarity with those two. And I thought something that was really, really stuck out from this summer, being able to travel and meet with these teams. Brandon Staley looks at Kellen Moore the way that he did sort of opposite during his 1 year with Sean McVay. Well, and I think that's a really interesting nugget.
See, that's important because sometimes you look at a team and you look at their results last year, especially if you're at some remove covering the AFC East and the Patriots, and you go, same quarterback, same head coach, same. So it's good to know.
All right, guys, that's how you do what you just did for the AFC. We got NFC coming up on tomorrow's show. All right, back here live on the Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy. And our NFL division previews continue now as I am staring at Steve Buchanan and Julian Edlow. How you doing?
That's my name.
Yeah, man, you are looking great. I love the energy. What is it? Is it because I'm wearing pants today? You love this, don't you?
Yeah, you wore a bathing suit last week on the show, so nobody can see what's going on below the desk.
Yeah, that's right. I got pants on. Everything's good. Awesome. All right, the AFC East. This is the division of jumping through tables and smothering yourself in condiments like ketchup and mustard. The Bills, the three-time Toodaloo. The three-time defending division champs here, guys, remain the favorites. Even as teams like the Jets and Dolphins here are closing the gap for sure because they have a boatload of talent on both those teams now. What is the outlook in the futures market for Buffalo? Not the Commanders, but Buffalo. There we go.
We got it.
Yeah, so I think rightfully so that the Buffalo Bills should be favored in this one here, a plus 120. Like, people are so high on the Jets coming into this year, but I really think that the Jets are going to have issues with that offensive line and protecting Aaron Rodgers. Like, that is not an area where he succeeds. When he's under pressure, he's only completing 47% of his pass attempts from last year, just over 5 yards per attempt in that scenario. So they have a loaded team of offense and on the receivers there, but I really think Buffalo is the most complete team. They didn't do much during the offseason to improve, but it's kind of one of those things where if it's not broken, you don't need to fix it, and that's kind of how it was with Buffalo last year. The receiver depth, a little bit thin, but really, if you have Stephon Diggs on that team with Josh Allen throwing to you, you'll be all right.
Yeah, Jules, what do you think? Criticisms of like their ability to have success like in the postseason aside, you look at their roster and it's easily one of the most loaded, right?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is when the knock on your team is that you can't win the big game in the postseason, that has nothing to do with continuing to win the division in the regular season. Right. So this is a team that we were laying, $2 last year to win the division. And now Miami starts the season hot last year and make a little bit of a name for themselves and make the postseason. The Jets bring in Aaron Rodgers, and now you get a plus on the division odds. And I think that's a little bit of a steal on Buffalo. So regardless of if they can get through the Chiefs or, finally make it to that Super Bowl coming out of a stacked AFC, I do think that the notion that this division is so loaded is still a little bit over the top, and you're getting a good price on Buffalo. There's no doormat, including the Patriots, who we'll talk about. I think they'll be solid enough, but Buffalo to come out on top, I still feel is the play here. And they start against the Jets. They were minus 120 money line at one point in time. Now they're getting bet back up. I think Buffalo week 1 is a good bet on Monday Night Football against the overhyped Jets.
The overhyped Jets. So my guess would be then, even with Aaron Rodgers in town, you can make an argument for going under 9.5 wins, Jules?
Yeah, if I'm playing the win total on the Jets, it is under 9.5 wins. You could even make the argument of taking plus money on the Jets to miss the playoffs. I think that the way that this, I think if you want to play under 9.5 wins, start by doing that, and you will be able to buy off it in the season, because the start of the schedule here is brutal. It's the Bills on Monday Night Football. They have a trip to Denver in there for what's going to be a hyped up matchup. They play the Patriots. They play the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Chiefs. They have a very this team could start 2-4, and then it is going to be absolute panic. So yes, I would look under on the Jets. I think protecting Aaron Rodgers is going to be a huge issue. Everything looks like all roses and rainbows on Hard Knocks, but that's not the way it's going to turn out when this season gets underway.
Buse, you got to like their chances to improve. Question is, like, by how much, right?
I mean, the bar is so low. So, like, sure, they're going to improve. I mean, I would hope that they would improve from what you saw last year. But like Julian said, like, to make the playoffs at minus 130, not interested in that at all. To miss the playoffs at plus money, plus 110, that's where I'm going from there. I'll give you the exact schedule that they're going for the first 8 games.
I scattered those games around, but that is who they play.
Yeah, Bills to start off, then the Cowboys, Patriots, Chiefs, Broncos, Eagles, Giants, Chargers. And I was just mentioning how that offensive line is going to give them trouble. They're facing some of the best pass rushing teams in those first 8 games. Cowboys, Patriots, Chargers, Eagles, all going to give Aaron Rodgers trouble and being under pressure. So would it surprise you if after the first 8 games of the season, this team is under 500? That would not surprise me at all. So if you're getting a team that's going to start off midway through the season, they're already under 500. Is there a legit chance for them to make the playoffs? Yes, potentially. They can still climb out of that, but they're putting themselves in a really bad start to start the first half of the season there. So give me plus 110 on them to miss the playoffs and fade the public, because they are hyping this team to hell.
Bukes, how tough is it to predict like what the Dolphins could do this season? Because depending on the health of Tua and how the hell their defense is going to play, the Dolphins, like you could see, maybe winning the division, but you could also see them possibly losing 10 games.
No, I mean, I don't think that's gonna happen there. I think this is the team to watch in the AFC East besides the Bills, not the Jets here. I mean, if you remember, this team had a lot of injuries last year. The offensive line was really banged up. That led to Tua getting injured because they couldn't protect him. Coming into this year, they look like they're ready to go. I mean, when you have two separate receivers that had over 1,400 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns apiece, good things are going to happen if you have your healthy team on the field. Then you have their running back, Devin Achane, who came back from Texas A&M. Like, he's a good, speedy guy. He can catch out of the backfield. That's another receiving threat that they have on this team. So I think this is the team to watch out for in the AFC East to make the playoffs. I like that one there. I'm not sure if they win the division. Obviously, you're getting some good money on that. I think it was plus 300. But for them to make the playoffs at minus 110, I think this is going to be a force in the AFC East this year.
Jules, which bet stands out to you right now when you're looking at the Dolphins?
Yeah, the Dolphins are a team that I don't really have a future on. I think, they were 9-8 last year. They're going to be a 9 or 10 win team. They're going to be in that ballpark. Make the playoffs, miss the playoffs as a pick 'em. I don't have much on them future-wise, but Steve mentioned all the key positions there. The position that's kind of up in the air is running back, and that's whether it's a season-long or week-to-week basis. That's where I want to be betting probably on running back player props. To start the season, Myles Gaskin cut, Jeff Wilson goes on IR.
Yep.
Achane, who I like a lot from A&M, he's a really good running back, is still dinged up. It could be a good spot for a heavy workload for a guy like Mostert to start the season. But as the season goes on, if they do not acquire a guy like Jonathan Taylor or buy in the running back market at some point, Achane's going to have a really strong finish to this season. Maybe not even finish. Maybe he gets in week 2, 3 and steals that starting role. He's a guy, if we can get a season-long player prop up on him, I would love to back him to go over 500 yards. But on a week-to-week basis, I think he's going to have some very modest rushing totals, and he's a guy that I want to be backing and playing in DFS, drafting in season-long, etc.
There's just so much speed on that team that it's going to be hard to defend.
I mean, for 20 years here, guys, we're talking about the AFC East, a division that consisted of the Patriots and then essentially 3 laughingstocks. But I think now the reality is, the cold, hard reality is New England is the least talented team in this division. So in terms of the Patriots and betting futures for them, Steven, what attracts you on the DK Sportsbook?
I mean, there's not much that attracts me with this team. Like, I don't like them to make the playoffs, but it's so heavily juiced. I think it's minus 330 for them to miss the playoffs. Don't like the win total over 6.5 or under 6.5. I mean, I think it's right there. So I'm just going to go with the Zeke Elliott prop. I like him to go over 4.5 touchdowns at even money. Like, this is going to be a much different looking offense now with Bill O'Brien at the helm. But this is a team that struggled in the red zone last year. Inside the red zone, they only had 19 touchdowns on the year. That was the lowest in the league. Only the Jets in front of them had 20. So these are 2 offenses that did not perform well in the red zone. For as bad as Zeke was in his final year with the Cowboys, what did they have him do? He pounded it into the red zone, into the end zone. He was their guy. I mean, even for somebody that was as bad as he was, 15th in the league in running back touches in the red zone. And he still had 12 touchdowns last year, despite going only 3.8 yards per carry last year. I think that's what they're going to use him for. That's going to be his role on that team. And I think this is a number he's easily going to go over. So when we're like midway through the season and he's already at that number, gone over, you could have got that at even money. I think that's the play there with Zeke Elliott because, again, he's not going to be going there for those big chunk yard plays. He's going to be going in there into the end zone.
Who's got the most fantasy relevance on this offense, Jules, now that Bill O'Brien has replaced Matt Patricia?
The guy with the most fantasy relevance still might be Ramondre Stevenson, but Steve and I are going to work in tandem here. Since Steve gave you a bet that he thinks is going to cash in the middle of the season, I will give you one that will keep you sweating till the end of the season, because an under, you will keep sweating until the end. It goes hand in hand. I think Ramondre Stevenson, who was posted at 6.5 touchdowns, moved down to 5.5 rushing touchdowns after Zeke was acquired. I'll go under. He hasn't gone over this number, and now, as Steve said, he already laid out the red zone struggles, which probably get a little bit better under Bill O'Brien, but when the Patriots are on the goal line and scoring, Ezekiel Elliott was acquired to do just that and is going to take away those chances from Ramondre Stevenson. Stevenson might sneak in with a couple receiving touchdowns. He's good catching the ball out of the backfield, but this is strictly a rushing prop, 5.5 rushing touchdowns. Stevenson hasn't been there, and that was with pretty much a 1,000-yard season last year, and now he's going to have that production taken away from him, particularly at the goal line. Stevenson under 5.5 touchdowns rushing. I still think he'll be their most fantasy-relevant player, to answer your question, Emerson, but I'll take a under on this specific prop.
Very quickly, Steven, you expect a lot of improvement out of Mac Jones now? We hardly saw him in the preseason.
I mean, again, like I hate beating the drum here,
Yeah.
but like the entire AFC East has offensive line problems, and who really performed poorly under that situation was Mac Jones. So will he be throwing better? Sure, but he's going to be under a lot of duress during the season.
All right, well, the playoffs underway in NASCAR. Pierce Dietrich will return to preview that. Some
NASCAR
DFS
playoffs.
plays.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Plus, hey, calm down. I'm teasing, all right? Relax. Plus, Messi in Miami. How much sense does it make to bet them to win the MLS Cup? We will talk about it next.
I think a lot of sense.
All right, the 10-race playoff chase for the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series Championship begins with tomorrow's Cookout Southern 500 at Darlington Raceway. You have questions. Pierce Dietrich, DraftKings contributor, is back. He has answers. So it's playoff time here, dude. We talked with Jeff last week about how the postseason format needs to change in golf. How do you believe NASCAR? What changes do you believe NASCAR needs to make to its postseason? Anything?
Yeah, just completely scrap the entire thing. I hate to be negative about this, but everyone said the same thing. Once NASCAR implemented a playoff, the ratings dropped. They wanted to save the end of their season, create a Super Bowl environment, but in doing so, they basically degraded the entire season. So I would scrap the whole thing and just go to a season-long points-wise system. That's probably never going to happen. Maybe NASCAR wants to be in sports entertainment, so maybe they could reach out to our partners at AEW and try to figure out a way to make the end of the season more exciting.
All right, talk to me about DFS now. People building a money-making lineup, they need your help. Top price guy you like, you're looking at someone who's had quite possibly some success here earlier this season?
Well, sort of, kind of. Kyle Larson had some success in the spring Xfinity race. He won that, and he almost won the race for the Cup Series, but Chastain wrecked him at the very end. So Larson's never won a Cup race at Darlington, but he has led over 700 laps. It's a unique intermediate track. He knows how to run up next to the wall. It's a high groove track. It really suits his driving style. He's never broken through for a big win. This is a crown jewel event. I think he finally gets the win this season.
All right, well, working my way through your fantasy rankings on the DK network here, your value driver for Sunday's race is who?
Justin Haley. As I mentioned, Darlington is a unique intermediate track. It's egg-shaped. There's high tire degradation. And the fastest way around the track is inches away from the wall. So that means that track history here is going to be a statistic that we want to follow. If a guy is good at Darlington, then they should continue to be good. And Haley has a top 20 finish in his last 3 races at Darlington, and in 2 of those, he has top 10 finishes. So track history is a stat I'm going to lean on a lot, especially if I'm looking for value drivers.
All right, well, talk betting to me now, Pierce. A race prop on the DK Sportsbook that catches your eye.
Joey Logano in a head-to-head versus Ryan Blaney. Joey Logano won the 2022 spring race at Darlington, and Ryan Blaney struggles at Darlington. He has just 2 top 10s at this track since 2016. Logano's statistics haven't been that great this season, but the new NASCAR schedule is kind of all over the place. Very diverse tracks anymore and wildly different setups. So it's very hard to read who is running in the right direction. I would not be surprised if Logano is poised for a playoff push once we get into these final races of the year.
And then I say bet to win. You say
Chase Elliott. It might sound strange. Chase Elliott hasn't had the greatest season, but it hasn't really been a terrible season. I mean, he would have made the playoffs had he not broken his leg or been suspended for a race. But here's the deal. Now that he's in the not in the playoffs, he can go with an unconventional strategy. He doesn't have to chase points. He doesn't have to play it safe. He can do things that the other top tier drivers won't do or are unwilling to do. He's been good at this track. Hendrick was really fast at this racetrack in the spring. And if you look at last year, the Southern 500 was won by a non-playoff driver. So I like the odds that you're going to get by betting a top-tier driver and a top-tier car.
Must be why you said in your rankings article, watch Elliott win multiple races in the playoffs now. Pierce Dietrich, good stuff, man. We got to go from the track to the pitch because Messi and Miami, they've got some work to do here if they're going to make the postseason. Look at how in fuego this dude has been on another planet since heading to South Beach, but was finally held scoreless for the first time this past week. Miami is currently 10 points outside of the playoff picture with 10 games remaining. DraftKingsNetwork.com's Chinmay Vaidya is going to join us now because football is life. Good morning, Chinmay. It is good to see you. So Miami was what, plus 4,000 before Messi join to win the MLS Cup here. Now I believe around plus 700 on the DK Sportsbook. That seems maybe quite ambitious to bet that, considering they're 10 points out of a playoff right now.
So they are 10 points back, but when you really look at how this breaks down, they've got 2 games in hand over some of the teams that they're chasing for the back end of the playoffs. So if they win both of those games, then they're really only 4 points back of the playoffs. But I agree with you that I don't think that Miami is the best bet right now in terms of value, just because we don't know whether they're going to make the postseason or not. If you're looking for bigger long shot odds, St. Louis FC, which leads the Western Conference, is plus 1,100, and you have a better idea of whether they're going to make the postseason or not. New England Revolution just behind FC Cincinnati in the East at plus 1,200. Even Orlando City at plus 1,800 offer a lot more value, knowing that they are more likely to make the postseason than Inter Miami. But definitely there's a lot of Messi fever, and I can understand why Miami are priced where they're at, even though they've got an uphill climb to make the MLS Cup playoffs.
Yeah, and that uphill climb starts tomorrow against defending champ LAFC here. I've already mentioned, like, Wednesday, first time Miami didn't score, didn't assist at Nashville. Nashville, interesting strategy. Like, they just packed the box and helped themselves secure a 0-0 draw against Miami. Can Messi and squad bounce back with some scoring, or do you think we'll see more of this strategy by opponents moving forward?
So as you mentioned in that Nashville game, Inter Miami still dominated possession. They still had more shots in that game. They just didn't find the back of the net. And I don't know that they bounced back completely against LAFC, since LAFC have a very solid defensive record this season. But it's very unlikely that they get routinely shut out. I mean, this is Lionel Messi we're talking about here, one of the greatest goal scorers in the history of the game. And, you park the bus against him enough times, he's seen it. And Inter Miami have some veterans who have started to see that as well. I think Messi has been a little gassed lately just because of the amount of games that they've played in such a short amount of time. And, Tata Martino mentioned that, there's going to be a time when Messi inevitably does not play for Inter Miami. They're going to give him a game or so of rest. It won't be against LAFC. That's unlikely. I don't know that they bounce back completely and score, 3 or 4 goals, but I think it's unlikely that they get routinely shut out. And I don't think every single team in MLS is going to play the type of defense that Nashville did.
Well, while you're here and nobody knows football better than you do, Chinmay, let's go across the pond. So a couple weeks in now, top of the table in the EPL. Brighton is there with 2 wins. What's been your overall thoughts through the first 2 weeks of the season?
I mean, we've got the usual suspects with Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Tottenham, Arsenal. But you've got Brighton, as you mentioned. They were 6th last season, so they have been building pretty well. So it's not a complete surprise to see them here early in the season. But West Ham at the top of the table is not something that I would have expected. Once again, it is really early in the season. You probably need to wait about 10, 12 games to see where teams are really going to finish. But West Ham is off to a great start, and they've done some good work early here, and they can put themselves in a position to maybe even finish top 4 or top 6 when it's all said and done.
What's your EPL bet du jour for today? What do you think?
So I like Tottenham Man City moneyline parlay, which comes in at plus 129. I think both sides are significantly better than their opposition. And then Brighton, as you mentioned, plus 135 on the money line at home against Newcastle. Newcastle really struggled in their last 2 matches, and Brighton coming off a tough result against West Ham, but have been the better overall side. And once again, playing at home early this season against a Newcastle team that is kind of down lately. I would take Brighton plus 135.
All right, Sunday fun day. You got an EPL bet for tomorrow?
Well, it's Arsenal and Man United as the headline game, and I would pick my Gunners to go on and win this one, minus 130 on the money line. But I think if you're looking for a better bet there, not a game result, I think over 3.5 goals is certainly something that is looking great, especially at plus 130. Both times these sides played last year, they went well over 3.5 goals. I think both times 5 goals were scored in those 2 games. So I would go over 3.5 goals, but I'm going to back the Gunners on the money line.
Well, while we're on the topic of goals, give me a goal scorer prop for either day, so today or tomorrow here.
Yeah, it's early in the season, which means there's a lot of value on some guys who have actually been scoring a lot of goals. Solly March for Brighton has 3 already, and he's at plus 330, which is not really something that you see for a guy who's putting goals in the back of the net. And then for Aston Villa, Moussa Diaby and Matty Cash each have 2 goals. Diaby is at plus 220 and Cash is at plus 700. I know that Liverpool have been playing great defense and it's very tough to score against them, but these are some big numbers for guys who have gotten off to good starts. So there's a possibility to really build up your bankroll here with some good numbers on goal scorers.
All right, Chinmay, good stuff, man. Appreciate you joining the Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink this morning. Coming up after our final break in the show, it's our final block. The NFC East should be another feisty competition in 2023. Biggest threat to the Eagles. Let's talk about it. Final block of the sweat, everybody, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink. It is why we have been on top of our game this morning. And we're wrapping up the show now with a preview of the NFC East, formerly known as the NFC Least. Maybe surprisingly more competitive than some believed it would be last year. Again, expected to be a feisty competition. Eagles atop this division here. Julian Edlow and Steve Buchanan expected, at least looking at the odds, to be the team that represents the NFC in the Super Bowl for the second straight year. In terms of futures right now, Steve, how much value can you actually find with a team this good?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't love a lot of their future markets that we have here, so I'm going to go with a player prop instead. I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts to throw for over 3,700 and a half passing yards at minus 110. Last year, he was just over this number, 3,701 passing yards. We're asking him to replicate that. What the difference is going to be this year for me is that maybe the Eagles don't get off to those hot starts that they did every single time during the first half of games. And when you look at last year, what they did, they averaged 18 and a half points in the first half of those games. That was more than 3 points higher than any other team in the league. And because of that, because they got off to those quick starts, they weren't throwing as much in the second half. They only averaged 10 and a half points in the second half of those games. But if you took them on the money line in the first half last season, you would have gone 16-3-1. That's going to be hard to replicate. So with that in mind, if the Eagles have to start throwing more in the second half, Jalen Hurts should be able to go over this number, so like going over there at minus 110.
All right, how much do you expect this team to improve after making it to the Super Bowl last year, Jules?
I actually don't think the Eagles are going to improve. I think that the NFC is weak enough where they could easily make another run to the Super Bowl and wind up in a rematch against the 49ers in the NFC title game because there's just not that much other competition. But if you look at the win total sitting at 11.5, they have a decently difficult schedule. They have to play the AFC East, who we talked about earlier in the show, who have some heavy hitters. And then they have regular season games in Kansas City, hosting the Bills and the 49ers again. So they have difficult games. 11.5 is a pretty large win total. You look at the Super Bowl losers. Over the last 19 years, Super Bowl losers have gone just 6-13 to the over on their win total the next year. 11.5 is a pretty hefty one. So while I haven't played any futures on the Eagles one way or another, I would lean to under on their win total.
All right, Bukes, in terms of the biggest threat to the Eagles in the NFC East, do you believe it is the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, I do think so. But again, I'm going to go with a player prop in this one here as well. I'm going to take Tony Pollard to go over his rushing yard prop. It's at 1,050 and a half. This is someone who went over 1,000 rushing yards last year. 6 games of less than 10 rush attempts, and that he's extremely efficient when he takes the ball. He was averaging 5.2 yards per carry, 3.8 yards after contact last year. When you think of this Cowboys offense, this is going to be an extremely high-scoring offense here. A lot of upside here. We only need Pollard to average about 61 rushing yards per game here, and he is now the number one guy. There is no Zeke Elliott. You know, there is going to be other guys that are going to be getting into the mix here, but Pollard is the bona fide running back one in this offense. I think he goes over this number here. He should smash this total, quite frankly, as long as he stays healthy. I think he's going to be extremely efficient behind that offensive line. So give me Pollard to go over his rushing yards for this upcoming season.
So, Jules, we're talking 12-5 last year on the DK Sportsbook, minus 230 to make the playoffs. Win total 10.5. What is enticing to you here?
Not much of it, to be honest. They could still cash the over on that win total, even with some regression. But this is a team that I think is appropriately priced, which makes them difficult to bet in the futures market. And with a team like the Cowboys, a public team, a team with a lot of fans that like to bet overs, I don't see it here. Like Steve mentioned, I think Pollard should be a stud, but he's a smaller back. It's going to be his first year stepping into the spotlight. I have a little bit of difficulty betting an over with him. Guys like Prescott and Lamb, really inflated totals. So I just want to focus on the Cowboys when they're at full strength, as they will be to start the season. That opening Sunday night football game, the number's been bouncing back and forth between 3.5. If and when you can get it at Cowboys laying 3 to the Giants, I would just bet them week 1 and then see where the season goes. I don't have a lot of faith in them long term, but I think that I wouldn't play the unders either, given the schedule and given what they were able to do last year. So I'm just looking at some early results on Dallas and would be willing to lay a field goal in week 1.
Well, on the DK Sportsbook, Jules, when we talk about the Giants, it's a team made the playoffs last year. Brian Dable kind of came in and worked his magic a little bit. Hell, they won a playoff game. Drew, I got you. Don't worry about it. 9-7-1 last year, plus 160 to make the playoffs now. 7.5 is the win total. So what, if anything, looks enticing to you when we talk Giants on the DK Sportsbook?
So the Giants overachieved a little bit last year. They're a solid team. I was ready to fade them this year, maybe an under 8.5. At 7.5, I can't do it. So again, I'm a little boring in the NFC East because I don't really have any futures on these teams. I think they're all very appropriately priced. So when I'm looking at the board, that brings me to some of these early season results, like I did with the Cowboys. The Giants are obviously in that week 1 game against the Cowboys. I laid 3 with the Cowboys. I hope the Cowboys smash them so that people are down on the Giants week 2, because if you look ahead on the board, we have every game priced on DK Sportsbook. If you've watched this show from the start last weekend, you know that I am very down on the Arizona Cardinals, who could be one of the worst teams in the NFL in the last 20
baby.
years.
0-17.
Where do the Giants go in week 2? A trip to Arizona against the Cardinals. That look-ahead line is only 4.5. The Giants should smash the Cardinals in week 2, and that number is going to be looking a lot different after we potentially see just how bad Arizona is in week 1.
All right, Steven, are you expecting some regression out of the New York Giants this season?
Yeah, I agree with Julian here. I think they overachieved a little bit last year. And then, even with that being said, and, upgrading up at tight end with Darren Waller, too, their win total has gone down about 2 games from last year. So, again, I think that this is pretty appropriately set. Not crazy about them making the playoffs. So just give me Daniel Jones to go over his passing profits, 3,300 and a half for the year. You're getting even money on the over here. And one of the reasons I do like that is the addition of Darren Waller, a reliable pass catcher at the tight end position. They had so many injuries over the past year, especially with their receivers, like Sterling Shepard cannot stay on the field and whatnot. But if those guys are healthy, I think you're going to see a lot more from Daniel Jones this year, who I really thought did well in his passing game last year under Brian Daboll. I think they're going to be able to continue to unlock his true potential, and this is why they've been kind of working with him over the past couple seasons. But I like Daniel Jones to go over that 3,300 and a half passing yard prop.
All right, new era, new ownership with Washington. They are clearly the least talented team in the division. The odds would say that. 6.5 is the win total, plus 300 to make the playoffs following an 8-1 campaign last year. Steve, what, if anything, has your attention on the DraftKings Sportsbook with the Washington Commanders?
Yeah, there's nothing very enticing. There's nothing I want to lay my money down on when it comes to the Washington Commanders. So I'm going to give you a total long shot here. Any Commander to have at least 12 rushing or receiving touchdowns, you're getting that at 11-1 odds for this season. So if you look at what Sam Howell is going to be working with this year, he actually has some pretty decent weapons overall. You got Terry McLaurin, who I know is a little banged up right now, Jahan Dotson, who led the team last year with 7 touchdowns, Curtis Samuel. There's a lot of speed guys on this team. So this is something that the Commanders are obviously hoping for. They finally have their quarterback. This is going to be the 12th quarterback they've started since 2017, the 8th quarterback they've started since Ron Rivera took over as head coach 3 years ago. So defensively, this team is going to be very strong. They might have one of the better defenses in the league. That being said, that could help them keep into these games here. And you look at Dotson, I think he can take another step forward here. Like I mentioned, he had 7 touchdowns last year that led the league, and that was with catching passes from Taylor Heineke, Carson Wentz, like some pretty poor quarterback play. Not saying that Sam Howell is going to be a major upgrade, but I think he's a better quarterback than the guys that he had from last year. So any Commander to have at least 12 touchdowns, 11-1 odds, I think that's a decent long shot you can take a look at.
Jules, what are you laying your money on here? Anything at all?
I agree with Steve. Sam Howell is going to be an upgrade. So when I look at Washington, 6.5 win total. They're a 6-7 win team, but pretty modest player props on him. 3,200 passing yards, 18.5 touchdown passes. These are set at like bare minimum quarterback numbers. So if he stays healthy, I think that those are numbers that he could easily go over. Again, I'm not looking too far down the line in the NFC East. I'm just playing things off the bat, and somehow this segment keeps tying into the Arizona Cardinals, who open up the season in Washington. This is a perfect spot for Washington to start things fresh under new ownership. They get a home game against the worst team in football. They are going to blow doors in this game, use it as a teaser leg, lay the 7 points. I don't care. Steve mentioned how good the defense is. Arizona is not going to do well in this spot.
Sneaky Super Bowl bet here, plus 1,400 for the
No.
Cowboys.
Never.
No, come on. We got 30 seconds to go and show.
So then we'll
Nothing.
keep it quick.
No one in here then.
You can start your rap. Cowboys aren't going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, just do a long wrap.
Yeah, take your time.
All right, I will do a long wrap. We will dive more into the NFC tomorrow with Jeff Howell of The Athletic and also Tommy Curran of NBC
Exciting.
Sports Boston. That is a show, everybody. Thank you so much for watching a Saturday edition of The Sweat, powered by Fast Twitch Energy Drink. We will see all of you guys and gals tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock Eastern Time on DraftKings Network and VSiN. Yeah, cheers.
Drinks.